All right, so the next question then will be answered by Terry McCormick first, and it comes from Mark Leland.
Can we talk about the government bailouts for just a moment? There's been a lot of bailouts to a lot of different parts of the working sectors out there. The latest one, $26 billion bailout, was approved earlier this month by Congress. Do you think it's just been a Band-Aid to this situation? Would you have voted for it? And what is the long-term ramifications, do you believe, and how can we turn this around?
The bailouts was just a symptom of the economic downturn because we're not allowing the free market to make adjustments for itself. Because we're not paying attention to what the Federal Reserve does. It's a private corporation. It's not monitored by any individual group. Most countries that have a Federal Reserve type of mechanism in their country have a 0% inflation rate as a responsibility. Ours is not accountable, does not report out. When we don't have a solid monetary system and we don't understand that deviating from free market enterprise and the market economy in general, and we use political answers to solve our problems, such as pushing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac forward and artificially giving away all these subprime mortgages. We have to understand that when they crash, as they did, then we're going to have an empty column in our banks, which is the reason why our banks collapsed. As a legislator, as someone running for government service, we need to understand that business as usual politics has a price. And the price is that we're manipulating the free market. We are using bailouts then in order to cause one poor choice after another. I would not have supported the bailout. I would have stood with free market entrepreneurs and capitalists in the U.S. House,
Terry,
such as
time.
Tom McClintock.
That's time.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Next response from Roger Roth.
Mark, I wouldn't have supported that $26 billion bailout. Here's what happened, folks. The Congress went, there were unemployed teachers, states all across America had to go and let teachers go to balance their education budgets. And the federal government came in with a bailout, one-time money that they're going to give to the states and to the districts where they're able to go and hire these teachers back. But what it fails to recognize is that 2 years from now in the state, where's that money going to come from? It won't be there in the state of Wisconsin. That bailout money won't be there. And now we have problems. Jerry, you probably covered this on your show. Teachers in the city of Milwaukee. 200 teachers were laid off because the teachers voted for Viagra on their health plan. Now, there are some problems in education. And all we did in this $26 billion bailout was to continue the problem further. And now we're going to have to make those tough decisions 2 years from now. And believe me, folks, it's going to be worse then than it is now.
All right. And final response to that question, Reed Ribble.
I think the idea of bailing out private companies is a bad idea. I mean, as a business owner, what a panacea that would be. I could take whatever risk I want, and when I gamble and I roll that dice right, and I win and I get rich. And if I roll the dice wrong, the taxpayer bails me out and I get rich. I think the whole idea of bailouts are bad, and they don't work. Quite frankly, they just don't work. And so let's take a look at General Motors, because a lot of folks on the left would say, but we needed to save all those jobs, and it's systemic. We've got to save all those jobs. Well, here's what would have happened. If they hadn't bailed out General Motors and General Motors went bankrupt, some jobs would have been lost there. But all that does is affect supply. Demand would have stayed constant. And so we would have had one less supplier, Chrysler or Ford, but no, not Chrysler because they got bailout money. Let's talk about Ford because they didn't. Ford would have built more cars and hired more people. And those folks who were laid off at General Motors would have been moved over to Ford to meet that demand. And that's the problem with bailout. It removes moral hazard from a business manager's standpoint. If there's no risk to business owners, they'll take that money. And I think it's bad policy. It creates booms, which is really the disease, by the way. The boom is the disease. The bust that we went through was the cure, and it's a bad idea.
Okay, we're getting close to the top of the hour. This final for Tracy, our timekeeper for the candidates, 45 seconds on this response. We'll try to get all three in. Robert Kennedy, go ahead.
You're all known as pro-life candidates. Do you think government has a seat at the table when it comes to abortion? And what exceptions would you allow for an abortion to be performed?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're waiting for me. Our first response there is from Roger.
I am 100% pro-life from conception to natural death. And when we look at what's happening in our country with the abortion issue, we had the Supreme Court step in, legislating from the bench. I don't agree with that. That needs to stop. Federalism works. I believe the states, the 50 United States, are better able to judge themselves. And folks, the state of Wisconsin is a pro-life state. We fought in the legislature to make sure that that wasn't removed, so that if and when the Supreme Court finally overturns that decision, we will again be a pro-life state.
Next response from Reed.
I'm also pro-life, and like the others here on the table, I've received the endorsement of Wisconsin Right to Life, and I have a 100% rating from Pro-Life Wisconsin. And does the government have a role in it? Man, I'll tell you, I really don't believe they do. I believe that life ought to be protected at every single level, from the conception to natural death, as Roger just mentioned. And so when government got in the way back in 1973 and basically made abortion a point of law, that had significant societal and economic impacts on this country. And I believe that is just a tragedy.
All right, and we'll try to get one more in. And again, the 45-second rule. I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I'm racing the clock here. Please go ahead.
I, too, am endorsed by the Wisconsin Right to Life group and am a pro-life candidate. I believe the 1% of abortions that rests on rape, incest, and life of the mother should not be a barrier to advancing the pro-life cause. Those are my exceptions: rape, incest, and life of the mother.
All right, with Terry's short answer, we will try to get one more in then. 45-second response, Robert Hornacek, go ahead.
Thanks, Jerry, and it just so happens to be probably the most complicated issue I'll ask you about, so.
Fire away.
Going back to illegal immigration, a couple of you have mentioned you're against amnesty. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you would all agree that we need to secure the borders. What specifically would you do with the 11 or 12 million illegal immigrants who are here now? How would you deal with those people? If you're not for amnesty, then what? And how would you pay for that?
And we're extremely tight on time. Reed, go ahead.
It's virtually impossible to answer a question as complicated as that in 45 seconds.
You'll have next hour, but do your best shot.
Okay. You have to, excuse me, you have to somehow create a penalty, because amnesty, and this is the big problem with the definition, amnesty comes from a root word called of amnesia. It means you've forgotten every sin, every crime, and you just let them in here for free. That's amnesty. If we can somehow get them to raise their hand, but force a penalty, which might include paying back taxes and fees, a fine of thousands of dollars, a return to their country. Those types of things need to be done.
Okay, we're going to hold this, and the other two get to answer at the other side before I do my segment, because I absolutely have to get out of here. It's 10 o'clock.